welcome to our wrap-up review of the new Giant Rain Advance, which is of course the carbon. This is a bike that's also available in aluminium. We've had this bike here for a couple of months now, ever since it was launched late last year. Blake's been ripping on it and we're about to tell you all about how this bike rides. But before we get into that, if you like the content on our channel, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and hit subscribe so you stay up to date with all of our content. Now Blake, mate, we've done our first impressions on this bike, and the first thing you're sort of saying is it's a lot speedier than the Rain of Past. Now, the Rain of Past was kind of more of almost like a kind of free-ridey all mountain bike. This thing, they've definitely, when they revised it late last year, they definitely put a lot more racing purebred DNA into the bike. Was that fair to say?
100% JT. We saw a few sneak peeks of this bike underneath the Giant factory off-road team last year, the EWSs. As I've said before, like the general silhouette of the bike looks like a Giant. They've obviously stuck with the Maestro linkage system, although it's been heavily revised. But the shape of the frame tubes is very, very different over previous year models. And that was noticeable to me last year, like a few different shape changes. Also noticed in a few of those pre-production test bikes under the pros that they were running it as a mullet, which this bike is now fully out of the box via a flip chip, mulletable, so to speak. It does come 29er out of the box, but with the flip chip at the top of the rocker link there, it's sold as a 27.5 inch compatible bike, which is very, very cool to see from a brand like Giant. Historically, the last couple of years, their high-end top tier advanced bikes have all been 29er only. So it's really good to see a lot of these bigger brands now accepting like mullet as something that people actually want. Out of the everyday riders as well as your racers, for sure.
Now, in terms of how the bike handles, when it's set up like a mullet versus how it comes stock as a 2.9, what are sort of the differences that a rider's going to notice when they change up the wheel size?
The big differences are just generally how nimble the back end of the bike feels. I myself, I'm 170 centimeters tall, so by no means tall. I've got quite short legs and a longer torso as well. So I generally much favor, from a playfulness side of view, the 27.5 rear wheel. If I was building up an all-out sort of race bike to go and race some longer enduros on, probably would go for a 29-inch rear wheel, because it's you are carrying momentum a little bit better and that type of thing, a little bit more traction in some instances. But the playful feel, which is where 90% of my riding gets done, is big jumps, trying to rip through corners and these types of things. That's where the 27.5 wheel comes into its own.
Awesome. Now, the Rains of Past, I know because I've owned a couple of them, they've always been quite a lot of bike. They've felt a little bit sluggish and definitely not the sort of bike you want to head out in like a cross-country or trail ride with. Tell us a bit about the new Rain. Giant obviously tweaked it a heap. How does it sort of fare for that sort of general all-day kind of jack of all trades sort of style riding? Is it still just a lot of bike and you wouldn't opt for it, or it's not too bad for an all-rounder? Not
at all. The general feel of the whole bike has changed a lot. I know that you've had a couple of Rains in the past. I've had a Rain myself and ridden quite a few over the years. This bike feels very, very different. Like I said, Giant have tweaked the Maestro linkage system on this bike extensively over previous year models of the Rain, and the actual suspension platform feels very, very different. It's quite a lot more active and sort of lively. It doesn't sort of, wallow like some of the Maestro bikes used to. It's also running a longer stroke shock this year over previous year models, and has more travel but feels more active as well. Yeah. And this bike, obviously full carbon frame, carbon fiber wheel set, etc., is quite a light bike, and it's very happily pedaled around. We've got a nice upright sort of 79 degree, depending on what geometry adjustment you've got it in, seat tube angle. So this thing will pedal up and down, up hills all day long and blast down them straight away, no dramas.
I was about to ask that, because it's got that sort of steeper seat angle and it's sort of geared more to enduro racing. Obviously the liaison stages, you've got to get up a lot of hills. How does this thing go pedaling wise? Does it feel sort of sluggish, or is that Maestro rear end kind of nice and firm?
Not at all, yeah.
Power down.
Exactly, yeah. So they've sort of tuned and tweaked the Maestro linkage to be a lot more, pedal platform friendly. Yeah. We've got a Fox X2 shock on there, so we've got more adjustment than we sort of know what to do with getting out on the bike the first couple of times until we get that thing dialed in. But this thing will happily pedal 40-50 clicks in a big enduro day, no dramas at all, no dramas.
All right, so what about descending? How does the bike handle? Obviously got a pretty aggressive head tube angle, and we know that Giant have geared the bike to racing. How does it go when you're bombing down a hill?
So yeah, like you mentioned, this thing has got a pretty relaxed head angle. We've got via the flip chip or swap out sort of chips in the top of the rocker link here, we've got a high, medium and a low geometry adjustment. In its slackest, I think it was 63.4 thereabouts at the slackest. So we're talking some pretty slack numbers there. This thing bombs. This thing did, to be honest, blow my socks off a little bit on the first ride compared to, you know, Rain's gone past. Like I sort of was expecting, you know, one sort of step ahead over those bikes, but this thing is miles ahead of its predecessor. It's super stable. It's not the longest bike. Like we've got in one of the sort of flip chip settings, a 445 mil chainstay. So we've got a longer chainstay, so nice and stable out the back end. Mid 450s reach on the medium, which is very comfortable for me. So it's not the longest bike in the world, but nice and slack out the front, and this thing will absolutely bomb the gnarliest downhill trails, no dramas.
Yeah, right. So again, getting back to that kind of racing
exactly
formula. Now, one of the additions that we've seen on the brand new range for the first time ever is the frame storage in all of the carbon or the advanced models at Giant. Tell us a bit about that frame storage. What is sort of some of the stuff you can stash in there and kind of use throughout the trail ride, or just forget and have there for you know, a rainy day?
So, like, obviously frame storage has been around for a few years now. It's nothing new. However, Giant only started sort of developing this in their advanced bikes as of about last year, I think it was, when we got the new Trance. That was the first time we saw that on a Giant. And to be brutally honest with all the other bike brands, Giant does this the best, I think. Their latch system is so super secure. It's truly waterproof, which some of the other ones that we've experienced aren't. We've had a couple of down tubes fill. They do obviously drain out, but water in there is you know, not ideal. Obviously we've got like a little neoprene sleeve that we can put our tools in. We can keep things nice and quiet in there.
Stock with the bike?
Stock with the bike, little neoprene sleeve with some little pockets and pouches in there, so you can put your CO2s in there. They're not going to rattle around and, you know, damage or make noise or anything like that.
Awesome little dish, man. When you're getting a high-end bike like this, inbuilt frame storage, super handy. And definitely if you want to stash like a little raincoat in there, some tools like Blake was saying, CO2, super handy. Obviously it keeps the weight down nice and low, so actually kind of enhances how the bike rides as opposed to kind of being on the opposite. Well, Blake, there we have it, mate. That's the wrap up of the 2023 Giant Rain Advanced, a super nice bike. Now this bike is just being priced at a really kind of sharp level across the whole range. Giant dealers have got these things in stock right now. Certainly worthy contender for people who are looking to build a bit of enduro racing or just sort of those bigger mountain all-day trail rides. All right, guys, stay tuned to our channel for more.